Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Random Watch Dude. And today I'm going to talk to you about Grand Seiko. So I haven't made any videos yet about Grand Seiko. I seem to have been making a lot of videos about the other big three, I guess, Swiss brands. The Rolexes, the Omegas, and the Tudors. But I do have quite an affinity, I guess you could say, with Grand Seiko. I've owned a couple. And I just wanted to start really by just giving you an overview of my journey with Grand Seiko, really, because we've all got a bit of a journey, I guess, in our collection, haven't we? And mine with Grand Seiko, as it usually does, with a lot of you guys that get into different brands, it takes a bit of a convoluted path. And mine, my journey with Grand Seiko, my discovery of Grand Seiko, I guess, started with Seiko, with normal Seiko watches. When I sort of got through the initial buzz of the SKXs, the really nice, cheap, easy to get hold of sports divers watches that Seiko put out. You get obsessed with watches. And then I got really into the JDM, the Japanese domestic market watches, and I got into that via a specific trader in Japan called Seiya, and I think a lot of you guys know Seiya.com. That's the website's closed at the moment, by the way. It's been closed for a few weeks now, maybe even a couple of months. I think the owner is a lovely guy, the owner of Seiya Japan. I think he's on extended leave at the moment, but. So if you went on to Seiya.com, SeiyaJapan.com, I think it is, you probably see that the website's not open. But when he is open, he's got a fantastic range of Seiko watches and JDM watches. And I bought my first Grand Seiko from Seiya, and that was the SBGX 265. Now that was a beautiful watch. That was a 37mm diameter, kind of a dress watch really, and it was a Quartz. And it was an absolutely stunning Quartz watch, and it was actually my first Quartz watch. And I thought, if I'm going to get a Quartz after all these autos, I'll get a Grand Seiko, because I'd read and heard a lot about them. So, and I talk about that movement in a bit more detail in a minute. But after experiencing the Quartz, I then actually just got my next Grand Seiko just by chance. Actually, I was on holiday in Melbourne with my wife over Christmas about 3 years ago now, and there was a Grand Seiko authorised dealer there, because at that time there wasn't one in New Zealand. It was completely devoid of Grand Seiko. So I found this Grand Seiko authorised dealer when I was overseas in Melbourne. Got a really good deal on an auto, another dress watch, and this was the SBGR 261, and that was an automatic. So I've experienced the Quartz and the auto. I haven't experienced a Springdrive movement Grand Seiko, but I will talk about the three movements now, because there are three distinct movements that Grand Seiko make, which I think, to a degree, two of those movements in particular separate Grand Seiko as a brand, I think, from all the other myriad of watch brands out there. The first one is the Quartz movement. So the 9F Quartz movement. Now this is the movement that I had in my SBGX 265. That is a superb Quartz movement, guys. I mean, if you're sat there thinking, Quartz, do I really want to go down that track? And is a Grand Seiko Quartz really worth all the money, I guess, for a Quartz watch? Well, I genuinely think it is. The reason I say that is because that particular Quartz movement, that they make, the 9F, it's actually a 9-jewel movement, by the way. This is not a cheap Quartz movement with plastic parts in it. This is a really high spec, high tech Quartz movement. Grand Seiko make their own quartz crystals, and the reason they make their own quartz crystals even is because they want the crystal to be perfectly uniform, which just gives them that extra little bit of accuracy with the movement if they grow their own crystals. I think that's fascinating. That's a proper in-house movement, by the way. That's when a quartz movement has its own crystals grown by the manufacturer. I think that's pretty good when it comes to in-house, isn't it? Pretty genuine too. So that 9F movement that I had in that Quartz, that was absolutely spot on for accuracy. It wasn't a second fast or slow over a year. It really was stunningly accurate. Really quite incredible, even for a Quartz. The other movement that they make is an automatic. Now that was that automatic movement I had in my SBGR 261. Honestly, I didn't rate it. I'm going to be frank with you. I didn't rate that movement at all. It's not it wasn't particularly accurate. I think it was running from out of the box at about +6, +7 seconds a day, and I've actually found that to be the case with most Seiko, even the high-end Seiko movements, like the 8L35, for example, which is a high-end Seiko movement. I've never really found that movement to be particularly accurate. I mean, when I say not particularly accurate, I mean, you know, it's over 5 seconds a day out, so it's not quite within, you know, the kind of standards that you expect to see, you know, for example, from the Swiss watch brands, who you'd expect to see within 2 or 3 seconds a day. And quite often, you know, with the likes of Omega, for example, they're absolutely spot on, the Omegas, and the Rolexes tend to be almost spot on. So I didn't really rate the Grand Seiko automatic movement, because I've never had a good experience with Seiko or Grand Seiko and their automatic movements. I think that's pretty bang average. But to finish off just the discussion on the movements, they make the Springdrive movement, the 9R. Now, look, I don't profess to know a heck of a lot about the Springdrive movement and how it works, but what I will say is, and what I know is, that it is as accurate as a Quartz, with all the goodies and the specs of an auto. So it automatically winds on your wrist, you know, with a rotor, like your normal automatic movement would. Like on this Rolex here, you know, you've got the auto rotor in the back, but also you have the I guess the benefits of the Quartz accuracy. So the good thing about the Springdrive, well, two things that are really cool about the Springdrive. One is that it is a patented product that Grand Seiko own, or I think Seiko use it as well. So it's kind of a Seiko-Grand Seiko patented product. So you won't see that movement with any other watch brand. It's a bit like Omega, you know, with their coaxial, you know, patented movements. You know you're not going to be able to get the coaxial movement in anybody else's watch, and it's the same with the Springdrive. It's very unique. It's very unique to Seiko and to Grand Seiko. And the other great thing about the Springdrive movement, apart from the accuracy and apart from the fact it's patented, is the fact that it's got a lovely sweeping seconds hand. It doesn't tick, tick, tick like a Quartz movement would, and it doesn't have like the staggered movement of an auto. It's got a beautiful, just a lovely sweeping seconds hand. So it's unique in that respect too. So they're the three movements that Grand Seiko make. I've experienced the Quartz and the Auto, yet to experience the Springdrive, but I do think that one day I will get a Springdrive Grand Seiko, because I really like the idea of having, you know, a Springdrive in my collection, just purely because it's so unique, and also it's got really, really good accuracy. The other thing, I guess, that's, you know, sort of, I suppose it's unique to Grand Seiko in the fact that they've marketed a particular type of polish on their cases, and I think we need to be wary of that to a degree. They call it the Zaratsu polish, and you can go on their website and, you know, they explain in great detail, you know, how they polish and finish their cases. Ultimately, guys, the Zaratsu is a name which is derived from the particular machine, and I believe it was a British machine that they used to use many decades ago to polish their cases, you know, because Grand Seiko have been around since the mid-60s. So there was a machine that they used to use, a British machine. They called it the Zaratsu machine, and they used that to create their polish. And there's no question, guys, that the polish that Grand Seiko put on their watches is really, really great. Look, it's a mirror polish, so their mirror polish is really, really good. They do satin finishing, of course, as well. They do a mixture of satin and mirror and bright. But yeah, look, it's I think the whole Zaratsu polishing, you know, it's more to do with really good marketing and you know, Grand Seiko trying to use the Zaratsu, I guess, name as a way to make you feel like you're getting something really special and something different. The reality is, you know, Zaratsu is it's just the name of the machine that they don't even use anymore. So yeah, it's a nice sounding name for a polish, isn't it? It could have been called the Toyota machine, the Toyota polish, or the Kawasaki polish, or the Suzuki polish, but it's called the Zaratsu polish, and we all think that's really special. It's okay, you know, and the reason Grand Seiko's polish looks so good is not necessarily because of the method that they use or the machine that they use. I think it's because they actually put their polishes on flat surfaces. So, and that leads on to the really the other really cool thing about Grand Seiko is that their case designs are quite unique. They're quite unique in the watch world now. They use a lot of flat surfaces. They use a lot of I guess you could say acute angles and sharp lines on their cases, which is quite the opposite of a lot of the Swiss brands now. And because of that, because they're used in sharp lines and flat surfaces, they're able to use this polish to its best effect, because if you put a nice mirror polish on a flat surface, it's just by default going to look a lot better than if you put that polish on a curved surface, because it doesn't quite reflect the light, so well. The other good thing about Grand Seiko, guys, is the price point. They're the equivalent, if you like, of Tudor and Omega, really, in their price point. And I'd probably put them in with IWC in that regard as well. They're in that kind of mid-range luxury price point. They're not trying to overcook their prices. Whether you think they're good value or not, I think is really down to what you're looking for in a watch. My advice with regards to price is not to pay retail, because one of the downsides about Grand Seiko is that their resale value is really bad. It's really poor. So I think, and that's the same with any watch these days, isn't it? But if you walk out of the AD, you haven't paid retail for a Grand Seiko, if you get a bit fed up with that watch in 6 months' time, you're probably going to lose maybe 50% of what you paid, which is a massive drop, isn't it? So my advice, guys, if you want to go down the Grand Seiko route from an AD, is to negotiate yourself a really good deal and try and get yourself 20% plus, is my advice. So guys, look, I'm gonna sort of try and finish this video with some pros and cons of Grand Seiko, and I'll start with the advantages of Grand Seiko. They're nicely finished. They do put a really nice finish on their cases. They have some colourful dials. They make really good use of colours. They not just the sun ray, the sunburst kind of colours and dials, but also they use a lot of texture in their dials to great effect. I think they make some very pretty dress watches. The Quartz and the Springdrive movements are excellent. So absolutely no question. If you wanted to get into Grand Seiko, my suggestion would be stick to the Quartz and the Springdrive movements, because they are, they're pretty unique to Grand Seiko in many respects. And just finally, with the pros for Grand Seiko, they're different, guys. There's a lot of watches out there that all kind of feel and look the same these days, and I think Grand Seiko still have done quite a good job of keeping their case designs quite unique. And so if you're looking for something different in this really crowded watch sphere that we're in right now, I think Grand Seiko is a really good option. I won't finish with it, but I will move on to some of the negatives of Grand Seiko. One of the negatives for me is that I think they've gone down the route of limited editions and special editions and regional editions to the point where it kind of almost drowns out, all the nice standard range of watches that they make. So I'd like to see Grand Seiko just throttle down a little bit on special editions, which aren't all that special. Other than there's a bit of writing on the case back, if you like, saying that it's a limited edition of 1500, and I don't think actually 1500 luxury watches is limited at all. I think that's probably as many as they're going to make anyway, even if it was a standard watch. So this is something I think a lot of the watch companies out there, a lot of the watch manufacturers are guilty of, is that they call something a limited edition and then go and make 3,000 or 5,000 of them, and to me that's not limited at all. I think limited is 100 or 250 or 500. The bracelets on Grand Seiko, this is another slight negative, guys. The bracelets on Grand Seiko are famously not very good, and it's more to do with the clasp. I don't think they make the greatest clasps, and I think they probably could do a lot more work on their bracelets and their clasps to make them a little bit more premium, and that would give the whole watch, I think, a bit more of a premium feel. Another negative, and I've mentioned this already, is that the automatic movement is pretty basic. I wouldn't recommend Grand Seiko if you're looking for an automatic dress watch. I wouldn't recommend them at all. I think you need to look at the Quartz and the Springdrive. And just finally, and I have mentioned this already, is that they've got a horrible resale value. Don't buy a Grand Seiko as an investment, for goodness sake, and certainly don't buy one thinking that you'll ever get your money back, you know, in the next few years, because I really don't think there's any chance of that with Grand Seiko. They always have. They always have had a really bad resale value, Grand Seiko, and I'm not quite sure why. I think it's just because the market for them is not as big as it is for the other big luxury Swiss brands, really. So just in summary, guys, and this is just a piece of advice really from me, is especially if you're on a bit more of a budget for your watch and for your first Grand Seiko, is go for a Quartz, because if you go for a Quartz Grand Seiko, you're getting that for probably less than half the price of the equivalent watch that's got a Springdrive movement. But you're getting all the goodies that Grand Seiko offer in terms of the finish and the style, and you know, the dials and what have you. So my advice is, you know, if you're on a budget, go for the Quartz. It's a fantastic movement, very accurate, zero maintenance basically. You just change the battery every 3 years and you've got yourself a beautiful luxury watch. And the other thing is, if you're looking for a sports watch, and Grand Seiko do make a lot of sports watches, I don't recommend them. Try them on, is my suggestion, because their sports watch range is very large. In other words, the dimensions of the watches are very large. The lug to lug is big. A lot of it's over 50 mil. They make very thick cases, and I think you might struggle, unless you've got a really large wrist. I think you might struggle with their sports watches, which to me lack a little bit of cohesion as well in their design. So yeah, Grand Seiko, without question, guys, is a dress watch brand. That's what they're good at, and that's what I think they should stick to. And despite all the pitfalls and the negatives about Grand Seiko, I thoroughly recommend them if you're looking to get into them and you want to get yourself a really nice dress watch for a reasonable price that's a little bit different to the norm. I thoroughly recommend Grand Seiko, guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Let me know in the comments and what you think. If you've got a Grand Seiko and you've got some thoughts and comments, please do drop them in so that the other guys can read those as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Cheers.